Wake up, NHL fan. It is Tuesday. This is the Morning Cup of Hockey alongside Colby Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in the NHL from yesterday's games. Marc-Andre Fleury now second all times amongst goalies in wins. The New York Islanders are a mess right now. They got to figure their stuff out. Frank Saravalli is going to join the show at around 9:30, and we're going to talk about all the teams that had winning streaks who had them disappear yesterday and over the weekend. So a lot to get into. Colby Cohen, tell me what's going through your mind right now. What's up?
I'm just laughing because I know when we were talking about what we were going to get into today, I wanted to start with Marc-Andre Fleury. I think that's the biggest story, but you seem to have a vendetta with the New York Islanders fan base right now. You wanted to put them in the first block of our show. You were texting us last night as they were getting beat up. You just have something to give to that fan base right now. And here I thought you were a guy who liked to be, not so much of a homer with the way that you look and cover the NHL. But I got to tell you, it's not seeming that way right now, the way you've got it out for the Islanders fan base.
Well, if you haven't caught on by now, Colby loves making shit up. Yesterday, he was just stirring all my words on Twitter and trying to make me turn into a rival with the Islander fans. And listen, I'm an easy target for them. I'm a Ranger fan. I grew up on Long Island. Islander fans hate me because of that. I don't blame them. The same reason why they don't like Adam Fox grew up in Jericho, grew up a Ranger fan. It's just how it works in New York. But I don't have like a hatred toward Islander fans. I actually kind of love them. I don't love Devil fans as much. Like, I think Devil fans are a little bit more of the, I guess assholes for lack of a better term. But I've been around Islander fans like my whole life. So I kind of like want to see them do well, to be honest. And listen, I've been alive now for 27 years, almost 28 years. I've never seen a Ranger Islander playoff series. Right now we have Igor Shesterkin and Ilya Sorokin. I want to see it happen. I thought this was going to be the year that it happens. And listen, the Islanders right now are a mess. And a couple years ago, 3-4 years ago, they had an identity. They had a culture. They had swagger to them. Now, I don't know what the hell is going on there. We saw a lot of quotes come out of the players, come out of the locker room last night, the coaching staff. It just seems like things were very up in the air. And tonight, they go into Winnipeg and play against probably the best team in the NHL over the past month or two. And things could take a really bad turn for the worse tonight, depending on how that game turns out. But, right now, what do you think about the Islanders, just their overall situation?
Well, first off, that's a tough trip into Winnipeg. It
Yeah.
is because you're changing time zones. I'll be honest with you. Of all the hotels that you stay in the NHL, the one in Winnipeg is the worst one. You're generally staying at high end Four Seasons, Ritz, whatever your team likes to do, but they're very high end. And when you go into Winnipeg, there isn't one. It's sometimes minus God knows how many degrees. You can actually walk from the hotel to the arena without actually having to go outside. There's like a pedestrian way, and you can kind of wiggle your way through some like weird little mall in Winnipeg to get yourself to the arena. So
What are you doing right now?
what?
What are you doing right now? Just like giving us a brochure of Winnipeg?
No, I'm just saying that I'm explaining why that's a hard game and why that's a tough game for the New York Islanders.
Just
What is your
breaking down.
problem? Well, I made a comment, Johnny, and I want to give it context.
Okay.
Okay, I know
Yeah.
you've probably never been to Winnipeg, have you?
Don't plan on going either.
Okay, so why don't you just shut the hell up and listen while I enlighten you about why it's a hard game in Winnipeg.
Okay.
So what's going on with the New York Islanders right now? I don't know, man. Their fan base seems angry.
Mhm.
I'm seeing a lot of people that are not only ready to move on from Lane Lambert, who I always thought was kind of a weird hire. I never really understood, like, why are you moving off Barry Trotz to hire Lane Lambert? It didn't make a lot of sense to me. But you see a guy like Noah Dobson who's having an absolute Norris Trophy season, and then a couple of other guys. Barzell is just about a point a game or maybe slightly over a point a game. But then, Kyle Palmieri has only got 10 goals this year. And, Horvat, who's put up good numbers, he needs to be better. They've had a swath of injuries on the back end. So they've had
Mhm.
sort of that consistent group of Pellick and Mayfield and all those guys that are usually, minute eaters for them, in and out of the lineup all season. But look, I don't think they're a playoff team. They're not playing like a playoff team. They don't look like a playoff team. They're out of the playoff spot right now. The teams that they're chasing all seem to, for the most part, be playing well. The Rangers aren't really playing well right now, but luckily they were so good early in the season that they built themselves a little bit of a cushion. So I don't know, man. I mean, you've got stats and you've got numbers that
Yeah.
I know you were telling me before the show, and I'll let you get into those, but it's not looking pretty right now, on the island.
Well, I think also what makes it worse is those 2 losses, the 2 recent losses in the last couple days, like that turnover against Nashville in the dying seconds. You can't have that happen, especially by a veteran player, Matt Martin. Like that, if you're in need of points, that can't happen. At least get it to the extra time, get it to overtime, get the point, right? Get the puck out of the zone. Don't throw it in the middle. It's like the one thing you learn as a kid playing hockey is never throw the puck up the middle. And that turnover cost them. And then, obviously they want a big response last night against Minnesota, a Minnesota team that's lost 8 of 9 games. I remind you because it hasn't been pretty in Minnesota either. So that was somewhat of a must-win game for the Islanders, or a can't-lose game. I think they needed that to boost morale, and they go in there and lose 5-0. They don't have any legs. And the Islanders season, you look from November 15th to December 15th, that month span, the Islanders went 9-1-5, second most points in the NHL behind Nashville, and a +9 goal differential. Since December 15th, the Islanders are 5-7-3, a -15 goal differential, and they only have 2 wins in the new year. So it's been a complete 180 for the Islanders over the course of the last 2 months, where the Islander fans were, begging for respect, in that November to December window. And right now they're just begging for like a change, it seems like. So it's been kind of wild how that turns out. But, I still think the Islanders are a playoff team. The Metropolitan Division, I have a story actually coming out today on it, with how tight it is between just 1 through 7. The Columbus Blue Jackets have kind of, pushed back, and they're in the 8th seed by themselves, and I don't see them making any sort of push. But as far as, Islanders, Devils, Hurricanes, Penguins, Capitals, Flyers, who have been the best team in the East since, I believe, November 15th. Shout out to my friend Lucas Georges, who's watching right now. I think the Metropolitan Division is totally up for grabs, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Islanders found a way to get their names up there, because another reason why
Why?
they aren't.
Why do you think that? Other than the fact that everything is sunshine and rainbows with you, well, why do you think they're a team that's
I
going to
don't think.
fight their way back into the East and like lead the East?
No, I'm saying the Metropolitan Division.
All right, sorry, their division, the Metro division.
Yeah,
What makes
yeah.
you think that? What have
They're
you seen that makes you think that?
they're 8 points back. They've been scoring goals. I think the one thing right now is they're used to getting incredible goaltending from Sorokin, and he's been pretty average too. Like Sorokin usually is a guy that stands on his head and helps them win every night. Or at least he did last year. And this year he hasn't been giving them the saves they need too. And they're
Well, they're a
finally getting the
minus eight. They're a minus
they're finally.
18
I know.
overall with their goal differential, which means they're not defending well. They're not scoring
But
enough because
Sorokin's
clearly
usually
they have
giving them the saves.
problems.
Sorokin's given them the saves in the past. He hasn't this year
So if it's been a little bit of a down year for him, where's your confidence coming from that you think that he's just going to turn that around? I'm just
because he's good
curious. I
enough.
mean,
He's good enough to do it.
because now it just seems like you're just you don't want to beef with Islanders fans. So now
I'll happily
you dug their grave, but now you're gonna lay in it rather than they're gonna lay in it.
I will happily be for the Islander fans, but with the way the Metropolitan Division is right now, like I would say the favorite to win the Met is the Hurricanes, and I think that's somewhat obvious. They've done it in the past 5 years. They've turned their game around this year. I don't think the Flyers will sustain it. I
Even
don't see
with
the.
goaltending issues in Carolina, because they do
Yeah,
have goaltending
we
issues.
talked about it yesterday though. They're so strong top to bottom. They play such a complete game. I'm not worried about their goaltending. Like as long as they're scoring goals, I think they're fine with the way they play up and down the ice. But the Islanders, they've lacked goal scoring
Right.
in the last few years. Now they're getting it. So once Sorokin just turns his game on, I think they're fine.
Well, what do you make of what Horvat said? Let's tee up Bo Horvat's comments here, and let's take a listen to this, and then we'll dive into it, because this is a marquee player for the New York Islanders, and this is the type of guy you really need to speak up.
At the end of the day, we need our best players to be our best players, and tonight that just wasn't the case. I mean, they were ready to go, and we weren't, and that's on the guys in this room. I mean, at the end of the day, I got to be a lot better, and figure out a way to get the team going, and also get ourselves going, because obviously that was unacceptable tonight and embarrassing.
So he calls out himself. He calls out the other best players. that's in regards to a 5-0 shellacking from the Minnesota Wild, who, as you mentioned, have had a real difficult time the last couple of weeks. I'm glad the Wild did win that game because of what that meant for Fleury, and we'll get into that in a couple of minutes here. But
Mhm.
um, you know, what do you make of that? Because it seems to me like he's talking to maybe Barzell, he's talking to Palmieri, he's talking to Nelson. I mean, the best players, right? Noah Dobson can't do anything else. I mean, he's been a star.
I mean, I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making it. Like, I think that's such a like I'm lacking the word here, not average thing to say, but like I've heard that
Is it a
phrase.
little bit of a cop out, you think?
I've heard that exact sentence. We need our best players to be our best players. I feel like a million times throughout my
So it's a
years. Like,
cop out.
yeah, I think it's a cop out. Like what Devon Tays did earlier in the year. Like we got guys thinking they're playing good and they're not doing shit. Like I think that's a call out. This is kind of
Right.
like
A
we just
cop
lost
out.
we just lost 5-0 on the road. Obviously, I got to say something. Our effort's not good enough.
Yeah.
Like Cal Clutterbuck after the game, Ethan Sears tweeted. He covers the Islanders for the New York Post. Cal Clutterbuck was like, "We were fucking bad." Like
Right.
that to me is just like saying it
Yeah.
how it is. Like
Well, and
I
it's interesting because this is a guy who was a captain in Vancouver
yeah.
and gets moved to the Islanders. And now look at the success Vancouver's having, and look at the struggles for the Islanders. Look, I don't know Bo Horvat from a hole in the wall, to quote our friend John
Uh,
Tortorella.
our friend.
I've never met him
Yeah.
before. Horvat, that is, and so I don't know what type of guy he is. I'm sure he's a solid guy. I've never heard anything bad about him, but it is interesting because you're sitting here saying you think it's a cop out the way he's talking to the media. I agree with you,
Yeah.
by the way. So
Yeah.
we do agree on that, which is surprising in itself. But, this is a guy who gets moved, and now Vancouver's been the best team in the NHL. So that's just something we'll have to revisit if things spiral. For the New York Islanders, that was a big contract by Lou Lamoriello. I remember when they asked Lou Lamoriello about how much, and he basically said too much.
Mm. Yeah, I
He
remember that.
openly
Yeah.
talked about, I gave this guy way too much money. It is what it is. He clearly he hates the contracts and this and that. I think Lou Lamoriello needs to go. I really do. I think ownership there, with Malkin and John Ledecky. I've met John Ledecky before. He's a really nice guy.
He's very well loved around here for sure.
I have a mutual friend with
Yeah.
him. I was there doing a playoff game a couple of years ago with Sam Rosen for Westwood One, and my friend brought me up to John's box, and I got to chat with him for a little bit. Super engaged, super genuine. Didn't make me feel like, okay, yeah, I'm just doing what I need to do, and then I move on to the next person. I mean, he really kind of gave me the time of day, which I thought was cool, and it always kind of stuck with me. But I think those guys probably need to take control back, the ownership from Lou Lamoriello. They need to probably bring in someone a little bit younger with a little bit of a fresh perspective. I'd love to see a new general manager get an opportunity. One of these young guys, that are sort of these up and comers. Maybe Steve Greeley's a name that comes to mind, who works with the Dallas Stars. But we'll see what happens there. I don't think the Islanders are a playoff team. I didn't think they were to start the year. I don't think they are now. I know you now think that their fans are A, scumbags, B, you think Horvat is a cop-out type of player. So
Okay.
we'll keep an eye on that as we move forward. But the game that set all this off was a 5-0 shutout for the Minnesota Wild. And the reason that is meaningful is because of Marc-Andre Fleury and him moving into second all time with 552 wins, the 74th shutout of his career, 12th all time. What an I mean, like, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Marc-Andre Fleury, and I've got some cool stories, personal stories that I want to share. But I mean, this guy has just been a wonder in the NHL, hasn't he?
I mean, his personality, I think, just is even better than everything he's accomplished in his NHL career. I had the chance to meet him once briefly last year. I went to like a Wild practice to do an interview with Boldy, and he was like the last guy on the ice, talking to all the kids that were there watching practice that day. Doing typical Marc-Andre Fleury stuff. But I would say also like my earliest memories of Fleury was, watching like the HBO 24/7 Penguins Capitals. That was the first ever time they did that, and Fleury was obviously a huge personality on that show. If you remember, like him playing PSP on the plane with Sidney Crosby, like, that's where I kind of first understood who Marc-Andre Fleury was. But it's interesting. Like as I got older, Fleury was always that goalie. Like I didn't like necessarily hate growing up as a Ranger fan, but the Rangers played the Penguins a lot in the playoffs, and I hated the Penguins. Like they were the team that I hated the most as a kid because of Crosby, because of Malkin, and stuff like that, just because of those playoff series. But there was never like a fear toward Fleury when he was in goal, and I don't know if that's the way he played or if that was his personality, like there was with a Marty Brodeur or like a Patrick Waugh. So I think for him to be on this list, obviously it's a huge honor, but it feels different than Brodeur and Waugh. I don't know if you feel the same about that.
Do you think that could be because you've met him before, you're working in the league, these people are your age now, and you're
Maybe.
kind of in it? When you were a little kid, I mean, because look, we were little kids. Well, you were obviously, you're what, 5-6 years younger than me, but we were very young when Marty Brodeur and Patrick Waugh were playing. I think Brodeur, I don't remember what year he retired in. We'll have to look that up because I remember he had that little weird stop in St. Louis,
yeah.
on his way out. And I might have been, I can't remember if that was when I had already started my pro career or if that was when I was at BU maybe, but I remember being pretty close to it. But at the end of the day, like, you look at the numbers. I mean, the guy's played over 1,000 games. He's got a career 912. And when you look at his stats, they're so consistent, right?
Mhm.
He's always over 900 his entire career, with the exception of maybe 1 year when he was a rookie. And this year, as of right now, they've gone through some rough patches. But, my earliest memory of Fleury and the first encounter I ever had with him, I was in college at BU, and a lot of teams would come into BU to practice before they played the Bruins because the Celtics would have a game or there'd be an event, a concert, something going on at the Garden. So what I remember is we're all sitting on the bench watching a practice the day before a game, and they're doing a warm-up drill, a 5-person warm-up drill where everybody touches the puck, everybody shoots. So there's 5 shots, there's a ton of passes. By the end in the 5th shot, the goalie's kind of sprawled out to the left of the net. The shot's coming from the right. And what I remember vividly is Marc-Andre Fleury, his work ethic in a warm-up drill in practice. This guy didn't give up on one puck in one drill the entire practice. It could be a 2-on-0 drill where the forwards or the defense, whatever, were assholes and they passed it 3 or 4 times right on top of the crease, like you're not supposed to do. And it didn't matter whether it was Crosby, Malkin, Letang, you name it. He's going after every single puck. He never quits on a puck. And that stuck with me because I'd never seen a goaltender who never gave up on a puck in practice. Goalies could see a few hundred, shots in a practice, maybe, I don't know, 200, 300 shots, depending on what type of practice it is. And so this guy never gave up on a shot. And then I'd fast forward to, I don't know, 15 years later, I'm working for the Blackhawks on their TV, broadcast, and they trade for Fleury. They bring Fleury in, and I'm watching him do the same thing 15 years later at the end of his career, will not give up on a puck. Okay. Will not, not face a shot, no matter if it's 2-on-0 or 5-on-0. It's just unbelievable, this guy's work ethic and the fact that he's carried it with him his entire career. Look, he won a Vezina. He won 3 cups. He's done a lot of really, really good things in the NHL. And it kind of always surprises me when people don't have him on their Mount Rushmores of goaltending, because he did win 3 Stanley Cups. He did win a Vezina. He won a World Junior. I mean, he did a lot of great things. You're shaking your head, and listen, that's a reaction a lot of people give.
Yeah.
But I just don't see why he's not getting more respect as far as the all-time greats go. And look, Andrew Raycroft had him at like 6th when he came on our show the other day. So, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Well, I want to ask you a question. You're going into a Game 7 prime career. Who would you rather have in net? Marc-Andre Fleury, Carey Price, Henrik Lundqvist. The other 2 have never won a Stanley Cup.
I've never been as high on Henrik Lundqvist as everybody else in the world, but I did play against Carey Price, and I just think that he is the most intimidating goaltender I've ever gone against.
Well, I think that's the answer right there too. There's no like
Uh,
intimidation with Fleury. I feel like because it might just be his personality. You know?
Yeah, it could be because he's got a fun-loving personality.
Yeah.
We've seen the pranks. He's known as a prankster. He's always messing with guys. He's the nicest and most friendly guy. I saw a quote yesterday from Michael Russo at The Athletic where he talked about, Fleury's the guy that every teammate tells you he's the best guy ever,
Yeah.
right? And look, I was in the booth in Montreal a couple years ago for his 500th win, and that was a very cool experience because the entire, building in Montreal was chanting Fleury,
That's cool.
Fleury. I mean, that is an opposing team player. Okay. Like everybody stays the whole game. It was a year where they were two of the worst teams in the NHL, the Canadians and the Blackhawks. Everybody stayed, everybody on their feet. At the end of the game, every player on the Montreal Canadiens came over and gave him love. I mean, it was a really cool scene. I was just lucky, dumb luck, we'll call it, that I was calling that game that night for the Blackhawks. I think Eddie Olczyk was sick or something going on, and it just shows you the type of respect that he gets from players. Maybe media people don't give him the same level of respect, but I'll tell you what, the players do.
Well, no, I wouldn't say it's disrespect, but it's just like I've been saying this
Not
whole time.
disrespect, but just
Yeah.
levels of respect.
Yeah. It's just different. Like, I don't know. I just can't remember like as a fan, like going into a game, like fearing, oh no, like they got Fleury in net tonight. Like it's gonna be tough. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is about it, but I do think the best thing for his career was going to Vegas and taking them to the cup final because the way things ended for him in Pittsburgh, like, yes, he won 3 Stanley Cups, but he really like fully led them to one in '09. The other two, he started and played in the playoffs, but Matt Murray came in and relieved.
Yeah, but you could make the same argument with a guy like Corey Crawford, who lost the net multiple times in his Stanley Cups. I mean, Scott Darling came in and played big roles, and
Yeah, but are you
other goaltenders.
comparing Fleury to those two?
No, Mark.
Yeah.
Not I said Mark Crawford, Corey Crawford. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. No, I'm not.
But I don't
That's
think
fair.
anyone, I don't think anyone like thinks of those Blackhawk days. And like, I guarantee you, if you asked like any Blackhawk fan to name 10 players from the Stanley Cup teams, I feel like maybe 50% wouldn't even mention Corey Crawford in the
You're
first 10.
wrong about that. You're
Really?
100% wrong about that. Corey Crawford is a god in Chicago. He is
Really?
a god. He doesn't come around anymore,
Mhm.
but he's a god there.
Okay.
I learned that. I would have probably agreed with you a couple of
Yeah.
years ago, and then I went and worked for the organization for a few years. Corey Crawford is an absolute living legend in that place. So
Mm.
let's just, let's just
Let me
make sure
squash that. Yep.
exactly. Let's squash that right now.
But back to the, Marc-Andre Fleury Vegas thing, like, he was the first guy they brought in. He was the heartbeat of that team their first year when they went to the Stanley Cup final. And he somewhat set the tone for hockey in Las Vegas. Like, he was a huge member in the community there in their first year. And, I don't know if it'd be crazy to say that they'd retire his number. I mean, no,
No,
you don't think so?
no. Retiring a number is, that
Yeah, it's a
that's
big deal. Yeah.
That's a big deal. You know what I mean? Is he a
Mhm.
Hall of Famer?
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
1,000%.
mean, it's
Yeah.
it's it's unquite. That's he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer,
Not even a thought.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
But look, I think if you play in the NHL long enough, you're gonna have ups and downs. We could go look at anybody's career, and they're gonna have ups and downs. If you look at the trajectory of a guy who plays in the NHL for 16, 17 years, he's probably the last goalie who's ever played 1,000 games.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen again because goaltenders do not dominate the net like they used to. There's no 80-20 split anymore in the NHL. It's at least maybe Hellebuck's a 70-30 type of guy, but everybody else is kind of 60-40 or even 55-45 type of split. So yeah, we will not see another goaltender play that many games. I'm going to make a prediction here.
Okay.
I don't think this is his last year.
What do
I
you
think I
think
think
he
he's going
stays
to
in
continue to
Minnesota?
play.
In Minnesota?
That I do not know. That I do not know. Minnesota is going to have some decisions to make here at the deadline. They've already fired a coach. Doesn't seem like it's worked. They haven't had the production out of some of their players this year. Kaprizov's been out. I don't know what they're going to do with him as far as bringing him back or not. But at the end of the day, like I could see him, playing another year or two in a 1B role. I really could, because he just loves being at the rink. I was around him in Chicago for a year. I mean, the guy is what he does in your locker room, always smiling, always bringing the mood and the energy up. I mean, he's just so friendly, gives everybody the time of day, media people, writers, TV, teammates, coaches, young players. He's good for the game. He really is. So my prediction is that he's going to continue to play. I know a lot of people think this is it for him. I don't know. I really don't know. He said he's got to play 15 more years to catch Brodeur and wins.
Uh-huh.
That may be true, but I think he's going to keep playing.
He also doesn't strike me as a guy that would like say he's on a farewell tour, right? Like I don't think he wants to make it about him. You would know better than me, but that's a guy just like you said. First goalie, right? Like everyone says goalies are so weird. Like the first goalie that maybe I've seen have a huge personality, just like growing up. I can't remember any other goalie that has done anything remotely close to what he's done as far as, outside of hockey.
Right.
So very cool. And like you said too about his work ethic, I've played with one goalie in my life from Pittsburgh, and he was the same exact way. Colin DeAugustine never gave up on a puck in practice. Always like the most fun goalie to shoot
Well,
out in
you know
practice.
where he
And
learned
that's
it. Listen,
and that's exactly that's what I was.
you know where he learned it. He probably
Yeah.
inspired an entire generation. So congratulations to the Flower, an incredible accomplishment. Hopefully he keeps winning this season. Hopefully we see him around the NHL. He's the last goalie left in the league that played and was around for the 04-05 lockout. He's seen it all. So good for him. And we will see what Minnesota does with their team, because they're going to have tough decisions to make. And that will be on Bill Guerin's shoulders. I think he's gone through some coaches now. He's hired a couple of coaches, so I think his seat, not hot, not warm, but the clock starts ticking when you get on to that second coach. It absolutely does. So big night last night in the NHL, Johnny?
Yeah, big day, a lot of hockey. I mean, I started watching that game at noon, the Sabres and the Sharks, but we saw a lot of winning streaks end yesterday, and a lot of teams that we talked about yesterday in our power rankings, all those teams lost. The Kraken's losing streak came to an end. The Panthers' losing streak came to an end. Vancouver's, the Hurricanes, Winnipeg lost on Saturday. The Avalanche lost. I mean, it was just a crazy day yesterday in the NHL. I can't really explain why that is that all those good teams lost. But yeah, it was a lot of storylines. I mean, that Columbus versus Vancouver game was incredible. The shootout move. Who was it? Marchenko.
Marchenko,
Yeah,
yeah.
Marchenko shootout move was insane. He got that from Texier, that little one-hand poke through the 5-hole. I mean, that was disgusting. What a game that was. But yeah,
Love when guys start trying to one up each other in shootouts. I think that's cool. I think guys see what other players do, and then they want to like build on those types of things. I'm shocked at the way that the Avalanche lost to Montreal last night. And one thing about that game that I thought was kind of interesting was that the Montreal fans were booing Jonathan Drouin. They were all over him all game. And look, like was Drouin ever that good of a player there? Like why
That's probably why they're booing him, because he didn't live up to the hype.
Again, he gets traded there into that situation. He deals with injuries. He deals with personal stuff. I don't know if that was ever an environment that was real conducive for him to have success. I don't know. Like, I feel like you reserve that for players that maybe were really good for you and then left. A guy who like didn't play all that well for you,
Mhm.
and he's a local. I mean, he's a French Canadian, Drouin.
Yeah.
So usually they look after their own. Because there's a lot of pride, obviously, with the French Canadian people, and they kind of don't like the rest of us. So,
These are Montreal fans, though. They booed Connor Bedard this year. No reason to boo him just because he's best player in Chicago and number 1 overall draft pick. Just passion.
Yeah. So definitely not a banner night for our Power Five, as we'll call it. I'm wondering when we revisit that next week, if we're still going to have similar looking boards, or if the trends are going to continue over the next couple of days. Obviously, some teams have been really trending up. I mean, you knew the Kraken were going to lose at some point, and Pitt, they needed a win. I mean, they're flirting with the playoffs. Crosby just continues to have an unbelievable season. I mean, what this guy's doing at his, at his age and, this many years into the NHL without a real drop off and a real dip like we're maybe seeing out of Alexander Ovechkin is pretty remarkable. I mean, it really is pretty remarkable. It seems like these young guys have pushed him to want to continue to be, the GOAT from the last however many years it's been since he kind of took the mantle, right?
Yeah. Well, you know how I feel about them.
We know how you feel about them,
Yeah.
and we know Cutter Gauthier loves Sidney Crosby and the Penguins.
And Cutter Gauthier saved the Flyers. They've won 4 in a row since the whole situation went down.
Man, I mean, the Flyers, they deserve a lot of credit. They win in St. Louis last night at the end of a 3-game road trip, coming off of a homestand in which, they stopped the bleeding on a lot of overtime losses. That whole situation. I mean, you don't see them as a playoff team, at least you didn't 2 weeks ago. I got to tell you that this is a good hockey team. I mean, they're winning against quality teams, playoff teams, non-playoff teams that are pushing to get into the playoffs. It's been fun to watch that team in Philadelphia. I will say they're easy to watch. You just turn on the local channel. There's a lot of buzz about them, especially the way that the Eagles absolutely imploded last night. Embarrassing night for Philadelphia sports with the Eagles. It's going to be Black Monday for that whole coaching staff of the Philadelphia Eagles. So probably time to take a break here, Johnny. We're going to have Frank Saravalli on the other side of this break. We're going to talk to him about his trade targets board. There's been a number of players recently that have spoken out. Elvis Merzlikins, we're going to ask him about that. He had some interesting quotes about wanting to be traded out of Columbus yesterday. So we're going to step aside here for a minute. And when we come back, Frank Saravalli will join us for the rest of the episode, and we will pick his brain about what is happening around the league.
Welcome back to Morning Cup of Hockey. We're now joined by NHL insider and the president of hockey content at Daily Faceoff, Frank Saravalli. Always fun to be joined by you every Tuesday now going forward on this show. We don't have a name for the segment yet. Our producer Vic said Frankie Tuesdays, but there's no creativity to that. So we'll try to figure something out as we go along here. But
as long as you don't call me Daddy Daily Faceoff, I'm all right with it.
I actually kind of like that. I kind of like that.
No.
Johnny, what did I tell you about using the word daddy on this show?
Yeah,
it's to do it.
No good.
Not to do it.
Daily Faceoff. That's pretty funny. All right, but let's get a little serious here. Yesterday, the Columbus Blue Jackets made headlines. Elvis Merzlikins, after their win against the Canucks, comes out, says he wants to trade. Have you heard any rumblings thus far about Merzlikins? I know it's only been about 20 hours.
Yeah, 20 hours since he clarified publicly that he's looking for a change of scenery and has requested a trade. But there's really nothing new for the Blue Jackets and/or for teams around the NHL. They've known for a while that Elvis Merzlikins has been available. They've known that he was looking for that change, and it's now just become public and verbalized. And I think, really kind of boiled over when he went a stretch of 10, 12 days, 2 weeks between games and is just kind of sitting there going, okay, well, what's happening here? As the Blue Jackets said that they're trying to get different looks from some of their younger goalies, including Daniil Tarasov. So for the other teams around the league, they've been watching him intently. They've been scouting him. They've gotten opinions from their goaltending experts. I think the big thing that's really standing in the way of Merzlikins or really any player that has some significant term is it's hard to move a goalie that makes that much money. And yeah, his numbers have been good this year, but he's also coming off of a 30 appearances last year with an 8.76. So, you were looking at it last year going, okay, a few more years at $5.4 million with a number that started in the 870s. It's going to be hard to get someone to sign up for 3 additional years of that, let alone to give the Blue Jackets any value in return.
Well, and not to mention, Frank, does anybody really have any idea what the Blue Jackets are doing with anything? I mean, it just never seems cohesive. They're scratching young players, they're putting them on the fourth line. Like, it just seems like it's a little bit of a shit show in Columbus and continues to be. I saw you tweeted the quote about Urasek not playing and why he wasn't playing. And I kind of shake my head every time I see that.
2 games in a row, David Uracek made a healthy scratch. Like, we're talking about a top 5, top 10 prospect in the NHL at this exact moment in time, and they're healthy scratching him. You saw Fantilli playing on the fourth line out of position. You saw Kent Johnson healthy scratch to start the year. You've seen Cole Sillinger yo-yo to the AHL after, a really strong rookie season. Like, the big thing for me is the Blue Jackets have actually drafted really well. They've had to say goodbye to some of those pieces along the way, including someone like a PL Dubois, for instance, but they've more or less made the right pick every time. But their development and fostering a competitive winning culture has been disastrous. And I think that's the real hallmark for this season has been, you could basically say since week 3, that the Blue Jackets season was over and they had to start turning the page to next year. Yet they haven't done any of that in terms of creating an environment that works for their youngest players. And that's really all that matters for a team that has gone so far by the wayside, continually adding big trade targets, free agent pieces from Johnny Gaudreau to last summer with Damon Severson and Ivan Provorov. Like, it's been a team that can't get out of its own way. And it's frankly still shocking that Jarmo Kekalainen has a job.
Yeah. It almost makes you appreciate more how John Tortorella has handled Bobby Brink and Igor Zamula and, even Morgan Frost. I mean, I don't know.
I think he's left something to be desired, especially on the Morgan Frost front. The repeated healthy scratches. This is a guy that had 40 plus points last year. Like, why? Like, I get that you want to try and get the player to play as hard as he can and get the most out of him. But at some point, you also begin to lose people.
And I understand that, but you look at the results that they're getting, and now they've put Morgan Frost back in for a stretch of games where he's played well. And the reason that I went there with you, Frank, is because I'm wondering about players like that. I saw your trade targets board, which is on your social media handle. It's on the Daily Faceoff website. And a couple of names that really interest me. And it interests me because I'm wondering what the Flyers are going to do with a guy like Frost, a guy like Walker, and a guy like Nick Seeler, because they're winning and they're playing arguably better than anybody in their division right now. And they've got the points to show it. So what is Danny Briere and Keith Jones and company going to do at the deadline? Because to me, it seems like they're caught a little bit between a rock and a hard place with some of these guys.
I mean, I said to you a number of weeks ago that this Flyers season has sort of been nightmare fuel. It's great that they are only a couple points back of the Rangers in terms of competing in this Metro. Like, they've truly defied every expectation possible, and full marks, like no joke, full marks to John Tortorella and his staff for the job that they've done. If they make the playoffs, he should certainly be in the mix for the Jack Adams. He's undeniably a great coach, not a good coach. The thing
He's also
is,
a good quote. He is a good quote.
He can be when he's not absolutely disparaging the media and then going to be a media guy when he's out of work. But that's a story for another day. My thing is, he's been so good that, to me, the only real important part of the season for the Flyers is not the wins that they're piling up. Like, yes, you want to create a culture and an environment, because we just talked about this with the Blue Jackets, where success is expected and that you can bring your marketplace back into the arena, because the Flyers had lost this market for a while. Part of that has come back now, but you need to get answers if you're Danny Briere on Morgan Frost. Is he part of the solution or is he part of the problem? On Bobby Brink and on some of these other guys where you've learned a lot about, like an Igor Zamula this year, who has taken on some power play responsibilities and has been a significant factor. It's not really about the end result, because part of where this all loses me on the Flyers is if they are to get in, does anyone really consider them a threat to do any damage? And if the answer to that is no, then I think you have to take a step back and look at the 5-year plan. So to answer your bigger question, which is about Nick Seeler and about Sean Walker and some of the other guys that, would make sense for the Flyers to move on from, I think they have to consider the value that's available to them. If they can get something really significant for Sean Walker, who voiced publicly yesterday that he's really liked it here and would certainly be happy to stay, that if you don't get what you think is absolute market value, then keep him, because it's not hard to re-sign Sean Walker and it's not hard to re-sign Nick Seeler. That these guys in some ways might be worth more to you than they are in the open market. I just think that they've played well enough this year that they're probably going to force the Flyers' hands in terms of making a move.
Frank, please don't cringe at what I'm about to say, but I would love you to turn your swag on right now, because
cringing already, Johnny.
I want you to turn your swagger on right now, because I have a question about just the overall NHL team swagger. I think we've seen a lot of teams start the year hot. Now we're officially in the second half. Some of those teams have cooled down. The teams that had the most swagger, I think, early on were the Vegas Golden Knights, the New York Rangers, the LA Kings, the Vancouver Canucks have carried it. The Florida Panthers have found theirs. The New York Islanders have lost theirs. There's been so much back and forth, I think, just with
the Kings and Golden Knights have lost theirs.
I said that. Did I not?
No, you said that they had it early.
They had it early.
And then the Oilers have obviously found theirs.
Yes.
Who else?
So, who else? The Bruins have kind of had it a little bit back and forth.
The Avs have had it pretty good the last couple weeks too.
Mm-hmm. So I want to know who's, I guess, overall swagger identity right now are you bought into the most? And I guess which team that's creeping around the top of the NHL could use that extra boost with a player on your trade target list? I mean, obviously one that's been talked about as of late is Trevor Zegras. The injury probably sets that back a little bit, but I'm curious on your thoughts with that.
I'd say the team that I think I really go back and forth on this. I think the Avs are a team that's probably waiting for an addition. Like, I think everyone kind of looks at that second line center position and they're like, oh, this makes a ton of sense for us to, Ryan Johansson hasn't been that guy. We've got to go out and find that person. And they've got a little bit of cap flexibility to do that. I think they also need a backup goalie. I actually had Avs GM Chris McFarland on my podcast, Frankly Speaking, which drops on Wednesday. He was really forthright in saying Georgiev's playing too much. He's on track for 68 games, probably 5 to 6 more than anyone else in the league, including Connor Hellebuck. They need to have him fresh when it comes to the playoffs, and his numbers haven't been that great, I think, based on some of the workload that he's seen. So the Avs are one team that kind of stands out as one that needs a bump, but I'll tell you one team that is probably under the radar on your swag rankings, but has been, I think, consistently excellent. And that goes for a stretch in time in which they had their number one goalie out for a while. I'm going to say the Dallas Stars. Like, I look at that Stars roster and they're playing right now with Miro Heiskanen, like, without him. When they get him back, like, tell me, look at their lineup chart on dailyfaceoff.com and tell me where they have a hole. I personally, I don't think they have one. And Wyatt Johnson proved last year in the playoffs that he can be your 3C on a Stanley Cup contending team. I think their game is, the style that they play is so perfectly suited for the Stanley Cup playoffs that they were my preseason pick to win the cup. And they've done nothing to this point as they just motor along to really dispel that notion.
Yeah, that's a team I know
And
you
I
always like, Frank. And when you have Jake Ottinger in net, you certainly always have a chance to win. But I want to go back to the early part of your response to that question. And I want to ask you about Valeri Nichushkin. Okay, we saw the news yesterday. He's going back into the player assistance program. So part of my question for you, Frank, is how does that affect a team's salary cap situation? Like, how does that work as far as what happens with the money of a player's contract when they go into the player assistance program? And does that give a team like the Colorado Avalanche a little bit more of a kick in the butt, to go out and make a move and try to find somebody to come in and play, in the top of their lineup? I mean, I know Johnny Boy here has been floating Jonathan Taves as an option for different teams on social media the last couple of days, in which my response to him is, shut up, you're an idiot, because
Don't call me
Jonathan
John
Taves
ever.
doesn't play hockey anymore. But I can't help but wonder when I see that news, and I kind of wonder how that affects the Colorado Avalanche.
Well, it affects them first off, not just cap wise, but on the ice in a big way. Like Nichushkin already had 22 goals this year in 40 games. He's already north of a point per game. And if you watch him play, he's got a lot of, Big Val has a lot of the Nathan McKinnon force of nature part of his game where he'll just absolutely bull you over. And that part they're really going to miss. I'd say that based off of the incident that he had last year in a Seattle hotel room, which was really kind of expertly swept under the rug at a really busy time of year for everyone, that this, in some ways, people close to the Avs really aren't surprised that something like this ended up popping up, that it was, I don't want to say inevitable, but they were certainly concerned about Nichushkin heading into this season. From a cap perspective, he still counts against the cap. Now, they can appeal to the league for some relief of that. But as it stands right at this moment in time, he's not like an LTIR piece. He's still on the cap, which kind of, it's not problematic, but it is what it is. And teams have to deal with that. So that's sort of where things stand. And Nichushkin, I just don't like, you can't go out and even if you had the cap space, you can't go out and replace not just that productivity, but that style of play.
Yeah. And he's been a guy that's been a key contributor to the Avalanche team, not just this past year, years before, to their cup run as well. I mean, he's been unbelievable. And, another guy that I feel like we have to ask about that's, his name's floated around the last couple of days is Corey Perry. Obviously his impact in the NHL has been significant throughout his career. And just any update on what you've heard in regards to him and maybe where you see him fitting best?
Yeah, his camp is fielding interest, and it's been pretty significant. I think there's a number of Stanley Cup contending teams that have inquired to at least find out more information and find out what this timeline looks like. Don't have any indication of when he plans to make a decision. I don't really have any doubt that he's going to be back playing in the NHL this year. And for me personally, the team that stands out as the best fit on paper is the Edmonton Oilers. I think they're one of those teams that's begun their due diligence process. I think they're one of the teams on his list that would probably have to be really intriguing. And he's just a gamer. Like I'd sign up to get Corey Perry on my team 14 times out of 10. On track for 50 plus points this year. Has played in 4 different Stanley Cup finals, including 3 in a row in the pandemic era, all on the losing side. He's won a cup. He's won a Hart Trophy. He's won just about everything you could, a serial winner that when you really look at the Oilers roster, the right side of their lineup, a second line right wing, maybe a little bit above Corey Perry's, sort of expectation level right now to be a guy that's kind of feeding, Leon Draisaitl pucks, but it's either 3C or 2RW for the Oilers at the deadline, at least in terms of their top priority right now. And he would go a long way at a league minimum or close to it to still allowing them to potentially pursue the 3C option.
I tell you what, he'd blend right into the Rangers locker room with his age. That's for sure.
Wishful thinking, Johnny Boy.
Yeah.
By the way, but like he actually does make sense as a potential right wing option, which if it's not 3C because the Rangers get Philip Scheidel back, that, he could make a lot of sense for a team that could use another right shot guy.
Yeah, the Blake Wheeler experiment went wrong, so why not bring Corey Perry?
Look, I think for the right number, Corey Perry makes sense for just about any contender. I just want to throw that out there. I mean, what could you go wrong having that type of depth in the bottom of your lineup where we saw early in the season he could still play on a power play in front of the net. He can still move up your lineup. He's been in Stanley Cup finals before. So, I think just about any team that is cap strapped, which is everybody that's competing for a Stanley Cup, could use Corey Perry. I personally would love to see him in Edmonton, Frank. I think that would give him a good opportunity to kind of give that lineup a little bit of something they don't have with Perry.
That's the perfect way to put it. It's not that the bottom six on that team is soft or anything like that, but he's just more willing than everyone else that they have.
Well, Frank, I think that's all we got with you for today, and I'm trying so hard not to say Daddy Daily Face Off.
Yeah, please don't. That's my fault.
You shouldn't have said that out loud because now I'm never gonna let that go.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate you coming on. We're gonna have you on.
Frank is your boss. He could just fire you if you
I know.
wanted.
That's why I didn't want to say it, but it's too good. It's so funny. Thank you for coming on, Frank. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you every single Tuesday on Morning Cup of Hockey. So we look forward to that. And as always, thank you for the insight. We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Oh, I know I'm getting a text after this. Just never bring that up again. But
The principal, you're getting sent to the principal's office for sure.
It just rolls off the tongue so well.
The look on Frank's face when you said that at the end. I hope we can get a screen grab of that and maybe use that for social media later. But look, I don't know how Frank has so much information in his brain. I feel like he forgets more about hockey than when it comes to that type of stuff than I think either of us will ever know. He's well connected and he's got a beat on these organizations like no one else does. So every day 9 a.m. we'll have every Tuesday we'll have Frank on to bring us the latest news and updates. I think that if anything crazy happens, obviously around the NHL, he's always a caller, a text away, so we'll have him on for that. But lots going on today, Johnny. Good to go through some of those teams that lost their streaks. It was really nice to spend 15 or 20 minutes talking about the Flower. I think it's well-deserved. Your hatred for the Islanders truly came through today for a Long Island kid. We'll have to monitor that, make sure there's no SOS for you this year when they start picketing outside your apartment. But I think that's all we got today. We appreciate everybody listening in, watching the show today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Daily Faceoffs YouTube page. We're constantly cutting our clips from the show, bringing in interviews, doing shorts. We'll try to get a good guest for you later this week. We're not sure who that may be. We're excited. We've got All-Star coming up. And that's all I got, Johnny. Good job today. Thanks to my co-host, Johnny Lazarus.
Are you gonna let me get a word in or no?
Vic. Oh, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say, there's a lot to watch tonight. Islanders in Winnipeg. Colby's gonna break down how to get to the rink in Winnipeg again for everybody. That's a big one for them. But also, I think the must-watch game tonight is Oilers and Maple Leafs. That's gonna be a really good tilt in Edmonton, excuse me. So some good games.
Everybody just assumes the Leafs are gonna win that game. By the way, our producer thinks it's a done deal. So if the Leafs lose tonight, blame our producer, Vic.
Yes, but that's all I wanted to say. So thanks for giving me the time and allowing me.
Go ahead. Now you took the ball from me as I was rolling to go finish it off.
Thanks to everyone that was involved in the chat today. Sorry we didn't get to any questions. We usually try to get to people in the chat. I'm sure we will tomorrow. So don't go anywhere tomorrow morning. Come right back here at 9 a.m. Get in the chat. We'll talk to you. We love talking to you. So thank you for listening. Thank you to Vic. Thank you to Colby. Thank you to Frank. And we'll talk to everybody tomorrow.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.